Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm Jess Shanahan. I am an EV expert, speaker, journalist, all sorts of things, and I love road trips. So I'm super excited today to be doing a reaction video to Ali Abdaal's Tesla road trip. Now Ali very kindly said that I could do this, that I could use his video, so I'm super stoked about that. So let's get to it.
So before I did the cliche YouTuber thing and bought a Tesla Model 3, I was really worried about the road trip situation.
Is it really cliche to buy a Tesla as a YouTuber? Is that a thing? I know that I saw that Shelby Church had done it, and apparently Ali Abdaal. But let me know in the comments who else has a Tesla, so I want to go and like creep on them because I'd love one.
Would it be reasonable to take the car on long road trips, and how much hassle would it be to charge the car? Would I be worried about running out of battery midway through the trip?
Yes. Just yes. Everyone is on their first road trip. Always worried about that battery.
Comfortable would it be, and how would the autopilot work in real life? So this is the video I wish I would have seen before I bought the car. It is not a review of the Tesla Model 3, it's a review of what it's like to take the Tesla Model 3 on a 1,400-mile road trip to the Scottish Highlands in torrential rain and freezing weather. This car is really not good for the back pain. You have a good nap.
I love that, like, step one, they've just stopped at a petrol station. Okay?
Oh, my lower back.
Snacks, that's why, snacks. Everyone needs snacks on a road trip.
This feels absolutely horrendous.
No, but I'm getting grateful, so I'm gonna say yeah.
The only thing is, for me, after about 2 hours of driving, I was getting consistent kind of lower back pain. Now this would happen in my old car as well, so I think maybe that's just me, but the Tesla Model 3 did not cure my lower back pain problem after sitting in that one kind of position for 2 hours. Overall, comfort, nothing to complain about. I do genuinely enjoy driving the car. It genuinely feels very comfortable. And just in general, when I'm driving the Tesla Model 3, I kind of feel like it feels like...
Just want to point out that the Tesla screen in landscape is so much better. I don't know why they didn't start with that.
A joy to drive. The 0 to 60 of my version, without any upgrades, is 3.4 seconds. And from 0 to 60, it feels genuinely sickening at times. And occasionally when I have new people in the car and someone's like, oh, hey, I've heard the acceleration is really fast. Can we try it out? And I'm like, are you sure about this? And like, we sit down, we get the car to 0, and then we just floor the accelerator and go straight. People are always like, oh my...
I think everyone who has an electric car does this. Like, obviously the Tesla is another level, but you know, even in my Renault Zoe, just putting my foot down with people that have never been in an electric car is wonderful, and that's all down to the instant torque. And this is one of my favorite things about electric cars, and one of the reasons that I think that petrolheads should be more excited about them. Obviously an electric car is missing a few of like the cool things that petrolheads love, like petrol, but that instant torque is a wonderful experience. It's so kind of exhilarating and thrilling.
God, oh God. And then they kind of feel sick, so if it kind of feels sick afterwards. The car actually has 2 driving modes. It's got acceleration standard and it's got acceleration chill. Now, I actually prefer to drive it on acceleration chill, where the acceleration is...
It's because Ali Abdaal seems like the most chill person in the world, so that doesn't surprise me.
More manageable, and it feels like a smoother drive. Whereas on acceleration standard, that's when you really notice it, when you're like sort of at a traffic light and there are 3 cars and you're all going in the same direction. At that point, I flip it to standard and I'm like, all right, lads, here we go. It goes green light, floor the accelerators, zoom so far ahead of everyone else, leave them in my dust, or whatever the phrase is. But yeah, the acceleration is absolutely mental. If you want, you can...
Again, you know, this is one of the wonderful things about electric cars, is that, you know, whatever you're up against at the lights, not that everything is a race, but when you are up against someone at the lights and they're kind of like giving you that look like they're about to zoom off and you're just silently just like, is amazing. Great feeling.
Can pay £1,500, I think it's $1,500 as well in America, for another over-the-air software upgrade that makes it go up to 2.9 seconds, 0 to 60. I think 3.4 seconds is too fast, personally, for me. The autopilot is absolutely incredible. Technically, it's not really an autopilot. It is instead a traffic-aware cruise control. So what that means is that it's gonna accelerate up to the speed limit, but it's gonna make sure you're a safe distance behind the car in front of you, and it's gonna follow the markings on the road. Now this is actually really, really useful. It basically functions as an autopilot if you're on kind of a long stretch of road for a long time.
Now this is one of the great things about any of these kind of driver assist systems that follow the car in front of you. They are wonderful for road trips. So obviously cruise control is great for a road trip, but something that's following a safe distance behind the car in front as well just makes life so much easier. Obviously you still have to be fully aware, but it's just such a nice thing just to keep the driving relaxed and easy.
So I usually put on this autopilot anytime I have to drive more than 2 miles on like one stretch of road, because then I can just kind of sit back and let the car do all the work for me. Now I've gone for the long range Tesla Model 3, which has an advertised range of 329 miles. And in fairness, when I'm driving in the south of England where it's not rainy all the time and where the weather is reasonable, I think the car has about a range of about 300 miles. Like I can get 300 miles on a single charge if I had to.
So I just want to talk about range and like what affects it. So if you're new to electric cars, maybe you've come over from Ali's channel or you found me in some other way, how you drive really affects the range of an electric car. So for example, if you're doing a lot of motorway miles, your range will drop quicker than if you're just going slowly around the city. And as Ali mentioned there, you know, driving in the rain or in trickier conditions at higher speeds, when there's more air density, in fact, is when that range will drop more quickly. And I think that a lot of new electric car owners are fine with their range just in their normal day-to-day driving, but they only really notice that suddenly their mileage is dropping quicker than they expected when they are out on a road trip or a longer journey. So actually I'm so glad that Ali made a video like this, because it really shows people who are thinking about a Tesla or another electric car that there are some things that you need to think about.
When we were in Scotland and it was windy and freezing and torrentially raining, the car's range was nowhere near that 329 miles. It was in fact closer to 200 miles. And
so up in Scotland, I don't actually know what time of the year Ali did this in, but raining, Scotland's generally cold, especially if you're going up in the hills, and cold does affect the range of an electric car as well.
That is such a big difference in terms of range. We also found that we couldn't quite rely on the car's advertised range. So when you set a destination in the Tesla sort of screen thing, it uses Google Maps and it tells you how much battery it thinks you'll have by the time you get to your destination. So we've talked about range anxiety. Let's now talk about charging. And now this
is the part of the video that I was most kind of excited about, because spoiler alert, they have some problems with charging. And I want to kind of clear up some of the stuff that they didn't understand. The kind of advice I would give if someone came to me saying, oh, I'm thinking about doing a road trip, what do I need to know? And the thing about Teslas is, because they have such a big battery, they take a lot more charging, which is why the supercharger network is fantastic. But I'll get to that.
is another whole can of fish, whole kettle of worms. I don't know if that's the right phrase. Kettle of fish, can of worms, who knows? But basically, when it comes to charging, if you're within the supercharger network, it's absolutely fine. Like in most of England and in sort of the south bit of Scotland, there are reasonable amounts of superchargers. And so basically whenever you need to, you can always slightly, go to a service station, supercharge the car. It takes about an hour to...
This is something that I love, is them just watching, YouTube videos in the Tesla as they charge. That's wonderful.
Go from 0 to 100% basically for a full charge. And when you're at the service station, you can do what we do and just eat a McDonald's or a Burger King or a Subway and just kind of chill. All right, so here is a map of all the different superchargers in England, and you will see...
East Anglia. We are woefully underserved. But, if you're traveling up the centre of England, you're all right, especially down south. But I think, as I've said before, the north of England have it a bit rough with chargers, as do we in East Anglia as well. But you can really see, when they start to get into Scotland, gonna start struggling. And let's not even talk about Northern Ireland and Ireland.
There are quite a lot of them in the south of England, but the issue is that when you go into Scotland, and Scotland is where we were going, you really don't have very many at all. So we charged up once in Edinburgh, we charged up in Perth, we charged up in Aviemore and in Inverness. And the sort of area we were exploring was this sort of northern bit of Scotland. And so there was not a single supercharger kind of north and west of Inverness. And it was a problem because we were relying on Scotland's third-party charger network. Now, this is actually a thing. They've got third-party charging points throughout the North 500 Trail, throughout the north of Scotland, and you can find them on an app. The problem is that we didn't know that you had to register for one of these in advance and get a physical card, which you would have to plug in.
This is one of the hardest things about being an electric car owner, is that there's no standardization, and it's so frustrating because you need 20 different apps, 20 different cards, and you're never really sure if something's going to work. Do you have the right one? Have you signed up? So, if you're trying to charge in the rain, you're there fiddling with an app because you haven't made an account or whatever it might be. And it's kind of frustrating, and I really, really wish there was some kind of standardization. Now, there is Zap Pay, which is Zap Maps paying through their app, and there's a couple of different charging networks on there. but it's still a long way off from being all of the networks. And some you can pay with contactless at, so it is getting better. But I totally feel Ali's frustration at this, because I've been there, I know how it is. It's really annoying when you're like, oh, there's a charger just there, but you have to spend half an hour working out how an app works, connecting to the internet, all of that kind of thing. And you know, when you're traveling through the Highlands of Scotland or the wilds of Northern England, you're going to be in a position where you might not have great phone signal for downloading an app, and it's really frustrating.
To these chargers for them to work. The app, for some reason that we because we assumed it's the 21st century, it's 2020, guys, surely you can just do stuff on an app. The only thing the app
Surely you can just do stuff on an app, if only.
would let us do is use the slow charging features. All right, a few more problems. So firstly, in some supercharger destinations for Tesla, in some of them you have like 20 different superchargers, so you know there's always going to be space. But specifically in Edinburgh Airport, where we had to charge up on one morning, we got there and there were already 2 Teslas in the 2 spaces, because they only had 2 spaces, and the problem was there was already someone waiting.
Okay, this is slightly problematic. So the battery...
This is frustrating as well. Now, as more and more people buy electric cars, there are situations where the places that you're going to, whether you're looking for a Tesla supercharger, a 50 kilowatt rapid, or one of the other rapids, or a fast charger, whatever it might be, now that more people have electric cars, you've got more chance to go somewhere and see all of the charging bays are full. Now, I have always used ZapMap to check and see if there is a car charging there, but obviously that's only so helpful, you know, if the person using it hasn't logged it in ZapMap or isn't using ZapMap, then you're not going to know there's someone there. So a lot of the time it is kind of, you just have to kind of rock up and wait. And this is why I think it's so good to be really, really flexible with your road trips, because there might be some time spent waiting for a bay to free up, or driving out of your way to go and find a different charger.
The battery is on 66% at the moment, and we are at Edinburgh Airport.
That's such a gamble amount. Like, do you just go on? Do you charge back up to 100% or 80%? Like, what do you do here? It's a really, really tricky situation. And, you know, again, I've been in this position where you're thinking, well, I don't need to charge. I can get to my destination with just a little bit of battery left. But then you're like, do I want to risk it? You do get used to this as an EV driver. I promise you. You get to know your car well enough that you'll know that 66% or whatever will get you to your destination comfortably, knowing the roads and the distance and everything. But still super frustrating when you'd rather have that peace of mind of being at 100% to go and do a journey that's going to take you like 55 to 60.
Edinburgh Airport trying to supercharge it, but there are already 2 Teslas charging, using up the 2 slots, and there is another Tesla Model 3 that's waiting to charge, so we're in a queue. Now, in theory, we could go all the way up to Aviemore, which will be 124 miles and take 2 hours and 36 minutes. And it reckons we'll be on 20% battery by the time we get there. So the only question is, do we trust the estimation on the Tesla that we're actually going to have 20% battery by the time we get there? Or is there a risk of running out?
If you're in this situation, and as Ali's already mentioned, you know, the Tesla will tell you this, but if you just drive a bit slower, you'd be able to get there with that amount of battery. When you're driving at 70 miles an hour, you're going to lose that range a bit more quickly. So in this situation, I would purposefully choose roads that were slower, so I'd avoid motorways. This is because I think it's way more interesting, firstly when you're in Scotland, way more interesting to go off the beaten path a bit. I also think you've kind of got to balance that range anxiety with how quickly you want to get somewhere. I would always take that kind of like slow approach, and this is a massive mindset shift from driving any kind of ICE car, petrol or diesel car, because you're so used to on a road trip going from one destination to the next, because you know that's how we drive. But in an electric car, it's really nice to say, well, I'm going to stop at this random place, maybe get an hour of charge on a fast charger while I'm there, top up by about 20% or so, and I'm going to go explore somewhere, have a coffee. This is the nice thing about electric road trips, but it is very different.
The alternative is that we wait here to be supercharged, or we potentially go up to Perth and then supercharge over there. So we've got some options.
And now we get to the best part of the trip and the most memorable part of the trip, which was possibly also the worst part of the trip, and that was the charging situation north of Inverness. Some of the time, this was actually completely reasonable.
All right, that was actually remarkably painless. We managed to register, set up a payment card and charge the car. Now we're gonna grab some breakfast.
But at
A+ Scottish weather right there.
other times, it was a total nightmare.
All right, so it's absolutely pouring down with rain. We are at this third-party charger installation. and we have plugged it into the car, but we're trying to figure out how to actually download the app to pay for it, because it's not entirely obvious how we do that.
As we found, for some reason, none of the fast chargers in the whole of Scotland were working for us, and we spoke to some dude who had a Nissan Leaf, and he said, oh yeah, you've got to apply for this EV charging card, and that unlocks the fast chargers. And we were just like, oh my god, why? This is stupid. It's 2020, guys. Come on, just like make it available in the app. Why do you have to get a physical card and then you unlock fast charging?
All right, update.
So the reason that a lot of these more rural chargers have a physical card is because it's easier than having an app that relies on going on the internet where, you know, signal might be weak. So I get the thought behind these RFID cards. So it's just a case of being prepared. Do a ton of research before you go somewhere. There are some great resources out there that will tell you exactly what networks you'll be coming up against, what apps you need, what cards you need, etc. But it does take a bit of pre-planning. But once you've done it once, you will always have those cards and you will always have those apps. So your second road trip, in theory, should be a much more seamless process.
All right, update. There is basically no charger in Scotland that can fast charge us. So we're going to slow charge using AC. And that means we're going to be here for the next few hours. And our sightseeing around Skye is a complete myth because it's not going to happen. But hey, it's raining anyway, so it wasn't going to happen anyway.
So this video is really interesting to me because I really want to do an electric road trip to the Isle of Skye. And this is kind of making me think, well, is that going to even be possible? But I'm going to plan that road trip and I'm going to share it with you at some point, and I will do it at some point. And we'll see how I get on. My Renault Zoe has a lot less range than Ali's Tesla Model 3, but I'm determined to do it. I want to go and do some photography and things on the Isle of Skye, some bird watching. So watch this space. I'm going to do that damn road trip.
So for most of the rest of the trip, we were relying on the slow charging of Scotland's third-party electric charging network. This was, again, it was reasonable. We had to change up our route a lot and we couldn't do a lot of the sightseeing that we wanted to do, but in fairness, it was like raining and foggy. And
this is why pre-planning is so important. If you know that, you know, the area that you're going to doesn't have a lot of Tesla superchargers or rapid chargers, you know, you're going to be spending 4 or 5 hours somewhere to charge, and that's where you need to base your sightseeing from. And obviously give yourself enough time for that, because you're probably going to be stopping a lot more than maybe you would have done if you were in an ICE vehicle. But it also means you can find some more interesting places, I promise you.
Missed you anyway and said that would have been pretty grim. But we did spend a lot more time in service stations and in coffee shops than we'd originally expected, because we thought this was going to be a road trip to Scotland and to see the sights and take photos, and brought the drone along and all that stuff. But sometimes the slow chargers didn't work either.
Right.
The whole thing about, you know, spending a lot of time in service stations and coffee shop, obviously that's not ideal. Like, service stations aren't inspiring places. I love a coffee shop though, and if you go off the beaten path a bit, so if you go off the motorways, in villages and towns, you can often find nice places to park and charge, where there's a whole, you know, dreamy village at your fingertips that you can go and explore, take photos of, etc. Obviously the weather here in this video doesn't help. It is a bit dreary.
We are trekking 10 minutes to the nearest French restaurant where I can do a wee-wee and we can get some food while we wait for 4 hours for the car to charge.
This honestly was probably the most memorable and the most grim moment of the trip. It was, we were all wet and miserable and freezing, and we had to wait like 6 hours in a coffee shop for the car to charge up to the point where it had like 40% battery, which would get us to our Airbnb by...
This is so frustrating because it would have been so much nicer if the weather was gorgeous. You could go out and walk and explore. So yeah, I wouldn't have enjoyed this. As much as I love an electric car road trip, this is grim.
Airbnb by nightfall. And we had to trudge through like 15 minutes of absolutely torrential rain and wind with the umbrellas flying out everywhere and not working to get to this coffee shop, because we were in some random Scottish town in the middle of nowhere.
Guys, so we've been hanging out in this cafe for the last few hours. We've charged up from 6% to 46%, which should...
The nice thing about this, at least, is most electric cars have some kind of app, so you can at least see how much you're charged. So you can sit in your coffee shop, even if it's a 15-minute walk away, and know that you are that percentage charged, so you can get on with your journey.
Theory give us a projected range of about 106 miles.
We had to charge once at a service station overnight. That cost £21.90 for 100% charge. Overall, our supercharger receipts came to £84.49, and the third-party stations came to about £20, which meant that our total cost of charging for the 1400 miles was £126.39. And actually, this was slightly cheaper than my old Nissan Note, but not by very much. I think it's because the third-party chargers were overcharging us compared to the superchargers. But if I had done this trip on my old 2011 Nissan Note, which has a miles per gallon of about 55, diesel 117p per litre, that would have cost £135.40. So we only really saved about £10, which is about $13, by going Tesla Model 3 long range rather than by going Nissan Note. Let's talk about...
There are lots of ways that you can make charging when you're out and about in the world cheaper. So there are some companies where if you get the app and a membership, you get a discounted rate. If you pay through the app and not with contactless, you get a discounted rate. You can always go and park in a multi-story car park when you're only paying for your parking and the charging is typically free. So there's lots of ways that you can kind of minimize those costs, but you know how it is. You just want to kind of get to your destination. If you're not planning to stop as much, you're basically going to whatever charger you can find. And obviously that's when the costs start to go up. But hey, at least it's still green travel, even if it costs the same.
And I was kind of hoping the Tesla Model 3 would be a lot quieter than it actually is. It's like ridiculously quiet if you're driving at under 30 miles per hour because you don't hear the noise of the engine, because there is no noise of the engine. But when you're driving on a motorway and there's rain and other cars outside, you actually get a lot of and it just feels like you're in a normal car. And honestly, I don't notice much of a subjective difference between.
So this is all about actually like how noisy is the road. So we all think that, an electric car is going to be dead silent, but you still got things like Ali's just saying, wind rushing past, the sound of your tires on the road. So yes, an electric car is super quiet, but you're still going to get road noise.
In the sort of road noise in the Tesla Model 3 versus the road noise in my Nissan Note, which also had the sound of the engine. The nice thing about the in-car entertainment system is that you do have that big screen. And so some of the time when we were at pit stops or if we were stopping at a service station or at a third-party charging station to charge the car, instead of getting out, we would sit in the car and we would watch stuff on the screen. So it's got YouTube, it's got Netflix, and when you buy the car, you get...
I'd actually be quite excited to stop and charge my car if it meant that I could watch Netflix, or even actually YouTube. I've been watching so much YouTube lately since I've been doing this channel. So I can imagine just kind of, sitting at, a service station where I don't really want to go inside, especially at the moment, and just, putting a Ali Abdaal video on or a Peter McKinnon or something and just learning something. That's what I want from my pit stops.
One free year of Tesla connectivity, and then I think it costs about £10 a month after that. So you get unlimited internet straight into your car. Honestly, I think the trip would have been less hassle if we had a petrol or diesel car because you just don't have to worry about the charging. But I also think it would have been less fun. And for us, the point of this road trip wasn't really to see the sights. It was more just to hang out with the boys and just to have a nice time. And when you have this thing of this shared adversity, this shared chaotic experience, so somewhat traumatizing experience when you're struggling to find chargers and the range anxiety. And
oh God, this actually makes me quite emotional and quite sad because, no road trip should be traumatizing. I really, really hope that Ali does another video like this, updating us on his second road trip, and, fingers crossed it goes a bit more smoothly now that he's, learned what he's learned from this first slightly traumatizing one.
The fact that the car's range is not as advertised in cold and windy and wet weather conditions, and the fact that you're freezing cold and soaked to the bone and your umbrellas aren't working because the winds are too heavy, all of that stuff, we wouldn't really have had that if we were just going in a normal car or if we'd rented a 4x4 or something. We would have been a lot more comfortable, but I think we would have had a lot less fun. And I think in a way, that trip was a good bonding experience. And it was a bonding experience because of the adversity and because of the struggle. And therefore, in a way, it was kind of good that we took the trip in a Tesla Model 3.
This is a really nice video, and it's kind of not the best showcase of what an electric road trip would be like, but it's actually really realistic. And I think a lot of people make these same mistakes when they're doing a long road trip, whether they're in a Tesla or something else. And it's all about planning and changing slightly how you travel and how you stop and where you charge and that kind of thing. I really hope that Ali does do another road trip, and maybe I'll do another reaction video there. I want anyone who's interested in an electric car to watch this and learn from it. and not take it as you can't do a road trip in an electric car. Now, I did 2,500 miles in a Kia Soul EV that only had an advertised range for about 120 miles. Because we planned in the way that we planned, because it was a big press stunt, it was so much easier than what Ali did on his way to Scotland. So it's just something to think about if you are maybe EV curious and you're wondering like how you can go on a road trip or how you can do those longer journeys. It's totally possible. You just got to plan a bit more and you've got to drive a bit differently too. I just want to say a massive thank you to Ali. I dropped him a message and asked if I, as an EV expert, could do a reaction video to his road trip, and he said yes. If you're not already one of Ali's like 1-point-something million subscribers, you should go check out his videos. He talks about all sorts of great stuff like productivity, business, books, YouTube, all kinds of stuff. So I'm absolutely hooked. So it was a real pleasure to do a reaction video to his Tesla road trip. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit like below. And if you want to learn more about electric cars, maybe give me a subscribe as well.